Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim Rochelle's. Today is episode 261, and we're going to be interviewing Trey. How you doing, Trey?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So how's your morning going so far?
Oh, not too bad. Got up, spent a little alone time with God, and had breakfast. Now I'm talking to you. So,
That's good. That's good. So you pray in the
oh yeah,
morning?
all the time.
That's good. That's good. So let's get started here. First question I ask everyone, tell me about your childhood and growing up. How was that?
Well, I would have considered it normal. I think most people do because you don't have perspective on the rest of the world. I was raised. My dad got saved when I was about 5, and became a preacher a couple years later. My grandpa was a preacher, and so from a very young age, I've had religion instilled in me, which is good and bad. We lived in a parsonage for 4 or 5 years, and I got to see the inner workings of the church. And so that, I won't say skewed my view on life, but I was sheltered, heavily sheltered from a lot of things. But also seeing the kids in a very poor community, I was like, there's a lot of stuff that I knew at a young age there was things that I didn't know and wasn't being exposed to. And I could tell that a lot of these kids had a really rough life. So it always kind of intrigued me. And I wanted to, we were trying to help them, but at the same time, you can't help somebody very well unless you have a perspective on what they're going through. And
No,
so
of course,
that,
that makes total
that
sense.
I don't know. As I got older, I was introduced to more and more things. I was homeschooled. So that
Oh, you
was
were?
also very
Did you have any
sheltered.
brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have 4. I'm the
Four,
oldest
big
of 5.
family. You're the
Yeah.
oldest of five.
And so I actually started high school because it turns out it was going to be more expensive to try and get my driver's license through a private course. So I was like, you know what? You need to get out of my hair anyways. Just go to high school. And so that, just opened me up to a whole different world, seeing,
How so?
words I'd never heard and sexual things and drugs primarily. I
So what
was,
was going back just a second? What was being homeschooled like?
well, with my mom, very strict for the most part. Is I honestly, after I hit 8 or 9, I mostly taught myself. She'd throw books at us and we'd do them and do the homework, and that was it. So I was pretty much self-taught.
You hit mute. You just muted yourself. There
I'm
you
sorry.
go.
What'd you say?
No, no, I'm listening. You said you were self-taught, basically.
Essentially, yeah, she'd just give us books. She'd help us a little bit, but by the time I was 15 and I took the entrance exam to see where I would place in high school, I was at a college level on everything except for math.
Yeah.
And so I did a good job of teaching myself, and I always have. But at the same time, there was a lot of real world experience that I never got because of that. You know what I mean? And
So,
so whenever I did start high school, I think one of the first things I ever tried was Flexeril. A buddy of mine had, I don't know where he got them, but like just like a fish bowl full of Flexeril, just a muscle relaxant.
Flex
And so
Reel's
we
called?
Flexeril,
Flexeril? I never heard of it.
I think it's just some generic muscle relaxant. But we wound up taking like 8 or 10 of those a day sometimes and just getting all zonked out. Your muscles just kind of go limp and you don't feel great, but it was different. It beat sobriety at 15. And that led me into smoking cigarettes, and then I started smoking pot, and that's where everything really started.
Yeah.
Was that just, they call it a gateway drug, and especially before it was legal, that's absolutely true, because you'd go over to a buddy's house and be like, oh, you want some, well, you want to try this, you want to try that, you should try this. And it's like, well, mom and dad told me pot was bad, why not try these other things too? Pot doesn't seem bad. What, the other stuff can't be that bad either. And that's where I made my first big mistake.
Yeah. So when you got to high school, it sounded like it was a big culture shock.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'd learned things I'd never even dreamed of before, and started making, of course, the bad friends that everybody worries about their kids hanging out. But within a year or two, I was that bad friend trying to, push my limits so far as getting other people to push theirs.
Yeah, I mean, my friend Johnny growing up, he was very religious. His parents, same thing, instilled religion in him. But once he got into drugs, he went off the rails.
Yeah, and that was exactly me. Let's see, I started drinking at about 16, quickly turned into an alcoholic, dropped out of high school at 17, started working. As soon as I could, I moved out, like right
Did you
at
say
18.
you were alcoholic by the time you were 16?
Well, yes, in the sense that once I started, I couldn't stop. and that's how I still am. I don't drink anymore, but I that first sip of a beer always turns into a bottle of whiskey for me every time. There's no in between. There's no you can have a beer. I cannot, and that defines alcoholism to me. Is I can't have any of it, and I will always want it. Um, that's always ran heavily in my family. Addiction runs heavily in my family. I guess it's genetics, but
Who else was
yeah.
addicted in your family?
Oh, lots of people. I got a cousin that's a real bad alcoholic, and still, I mean, he relapses all the time. Got cousins on drugs. Had a cousin die of a heroin overdose a few years ago. It's just very prevalent in small town areas, especially. There's not much else to do around here.
Yeah, how you said your town's 1,200 people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really tiny. I don't even know how. I would have to look up how many is in my township. I have no clue. I know it's a lot more than that, though.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So drugs were prevalent in this small community.
Oh yeah, still are. Probably always will be.
I guess it just spreads easier when there's a lot less people around and there's nothing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So having a lack of interesting things is really a big deal because we have a lot of nature around here, which just gives you more places to go hide and smoke a joint or do whatever.
So you said the first thing you tried was pot.
Yeah, pretty much. Besides like the muscle relaxers.
Who was with? Who'd you do it with the first time?
Well, actually, I'd heard all my friends talking about it, and I wanted to try it. And they seemed happy doing it, so I asked my cousin to bring me some, and he did. And a couple other buddies came with him, and of course, especially a small town, that's how it is. Everybody wants to smoke everybody else's stuff because nobody has money. And so we went behind my house before the parents got home and smoked a joint, and I didn't feel a daggum thing. And I was sad. They were all high. And I'm like, okay. They're like, well, it doesn't always work your first time. So the next day, they invited me down to the park, and they were rolling a blunt. And boy, I got probably the most stoned I've ever been on weed that first time. And I remember walking home feeling like a robot. And my buddy picked me up. He's like, "You need to go take a nap." I guess I'm sure I was acting all crazy, but yeah, that's really what started. It was like, man, this is awesome, and it progressed from there. And I wanted to try everything I could get my hands on.
So what was the next thing after pot? Booze.
Well, booze, yeah, I honestly started drinking a little bit before that. It wasn't real heavy, but like the first couple times I started drinking, I knew that if I was going to do it, it was going to be an all night thing.
What was the
Uh,
earliest age you did anything?
14 or 15, I smoked my first cigarette, and
Okay.
then came about 2 weeks after that. So probably early 15.
So you said you dropped out of high school at 17?
Yeah, they caught me smoking cigarettes behind there and wanted to do this and that. And I don't like getting yelled at very much. So I just walked off and never went back.
Really? What'd your parents say?
Well, they knew at that age, mom and dad were starting to fight, and they got a divorce like a year and a half later. So they knew they couldn't control me. I was at that age to where I was bigger than both of them, and they couldn't really do anything physically. And they knew if they tried to do too much mentally or emotionally, it would just push me away even farther. So they just kind of let me be.
What made you make the decision to leave? No,
The fact that I couldn't stand my mom, we didn't talk for 11
no, no.
years.
Leave high school. Leave high
Oh,
school.
high school. Because I didn't feel like I was learning anything. Because, like I said, even before I went in, I was at a college level on pretty much everything but math, and I wanted to make money. I was already working what I could, but I wanted to get a tax-paying job and be able to support for myself. I knew my family was falling apart, so I just need to get out and do life on my own.
Yeah. So what age did you leave your house?
Just after I turned 18,
Just after you turned 18?
moved in with a buddy, and then within a year, I had my own place.
What were you doing for work at the time?
I worked at a restaurant for 11 years. Started off in the all on the register. I did everything. Um, I wound up managing for several years, and that was bad because the second night I was ever there at close, they took me up in the kitchen, handed me a beer, sat down on the counter, and pulled out a bong.
Yeah, I hear
So
the
that,
restaurant industry is very, very heavy drug culture.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the only way most of those guys get through their day. And while I don't condone it, I understand it because people are mean, man. People are the worst part of about any job like that or customer service of any kind.
Oh yeah, I'm in
Is
retail, so I know. And
Yeah.
I deal with large sale items, so people, when it comes to a lot of money, they can act
Hmm.
crazy.
Oh yeah, and that's what I always try to tell people is like, I don't care if you're having a bad day. Be nice to that kid behind the counter because you don't know what they're going through either.
Oh, of
It's
course.
rough, man. And then you just make them want to go and do worse things every day. But yeah, restaurant industry is where I got introduced to mushrooms and this. Well, I should go back. In high school, this one girl kept giving me pain pills, and I always liked them, but I never really got that addicted to them. Right. Well, whenever I got my own place, the girl I my one of my best friends was my roommate, but she decided quickly to move out with her boyfriend. So I was just looking for about anybody who'd help me pay the bills. I just, I didn't want to have to give up my place, break my lease. And this guy came down. I won't say his name, but he was from Indianapolis and he was living with his parents because he'd gone through a bunch of stuff, just got out of jail. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I got him a job. He seemed like a nice guy. No big deal. And like, hey, you want to move in? All we did was smoke and drink. That was it at the time. About a month after he moved in, he pulled out some Vicodin and gave them to me. And we started getting morphine. And then we started buying scripts. And before you know it, I was an opiate addict. And within 9 months of me that first time, within the first year he was there, I was shooting up heroin. And I don't know, it was just a really steep slope. But at 19 years old, I was shoving needles in my arm. And I honestly, even looking back, I don't know how it got to that fast. I just didn't really care, I guess.
I can't imagine sticking a needle in myself. That must, especially the first time, must be hard.
Oh, I didn't do it to myself the first time, but once you're around it for like a month or two. Well, for me, I've always been a quick learner, anyways, and I don't have a lot of fear, so it was just what everybody around me was doing. I was surrounded by bad people, so I just did it to fit in, and I like getting high. And then you quickly realize that, especially with opiates, and I'm sure meth and stuff too. I never really did speed, but once you get started, you're hooked. And like that, they say hooked because you can't get away from it hardly. And when you do, it rips a piece of you out. And I lost most of the people I would actually consider friends at that point in my life because they didn't want to be around it, and I have mad respect for that. But like every week, I just find myself around more bad people, and we started making runs to Indianapolis to go pick up balls or however much, and we'd bring it back, cut it down, make our money, make our dope for the week, and still have some money left over to go make the next trip. And so that's when it really started getting bad because here I am, I'm not even 20 years old, and I'm running a trap house. That was a rough point in my life. Soon after that, that
So,
roommate, I
real
don't know.
quick, go back. Explain what a trap house is.
Well, I reckon it's my definition would be somewhere where you go and there's a good chance you're being watched and you're going to get caught in a trap. You're either going to get, you're probably already hooked on dope, and then chances are the cops are going to come find you and want to talk to you and want you to rat us out, most likely. And I praise God that He got me out of that before it ever came to that. My roommate at the time, they got pulled over for a tail light or something stupid. But it turned out he had a warrant. He hadn't finished up his stuff in Indiana. And so I didn't know that. And he got arrested and went back. Well, whenever we went to get some stuff out of his room for him, I realized how bad it was. We had little stuff going missing for quite a while. Everything that had ever gone missing in that house was in his closet. He'd been stealing from us. I found pill bottles full of what looked like little, we call them teeners, tenth of a gram of heroin. Well, I was like, I was still doing the stuff. Okay, I'll do it. It was drywall. He'd punched a hole in the wall, crumbled up little pieces of drywall, and bagged it out, and that's what he'd been selling.
Oh
And so I had
shit,
bunch of people thought I was in on that. And so, yeah, I was kind of in fear for my life there for a while. And I
that's
smoothed
crazy.
everything up. But I had no idea he was doing that. I was just trying to get high. I wasn't even trying to. And another thing, he would try to convince people to do it. I wouldn't sell to anybody unless I already knew they were addicted. I wouldn't give it to any kids. I wouldn't give it to anybody younger than me. Like they were already junkies that were coming over and buying from me. I wouldn't do that because I knew what it was doing to me, and I wasn't trying to get anybody else started in that life. He was trying to push it on people, and so that's where I realized that I seen what he was doing. I was like, okay, I have to get clean. I don't want to go to prison. I have to get off this. And I don't know if you've heard of Suboxone,
Yeah, I've
and
heard
it's a little
Suboxone.
they're in pill form, or they're these little tabs now, but they used to be in pill form, and I really like that because I was able to get 5 or 6 of those, I think, and I'd cut them down. So the first day I'd do one, second day I'd do one. After 2 days, I'd cut it in half, so I'd go to a half each, and then by the time I was out of those, I was down to like an eighth of one each, and that's what helped me get through the physical withdrawals. And so, if you are hooked on opiates, I pray to God that maybe Suboxone will work for you, but you can't abuse them. That's the thing. Everybody wants to try and get high on them. You have to want to quit before they'll work.
You can get high on Suboxone?
I guess if that's what you want to call it, non anything that makes you not sober is high, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Kids do this air duster and stuff. That's getting high because they ain't sober. I wouldn't call it a good high, but they ain't sober. You know what I mean? And that's what so
No.
many people out there, they're just trying to escape reality. That's what I did for about 15 years.
Why do you think you were trying to escape reality?
Because reality sucks because you have to work to make a good reality for yourself, and nobody wants to put in the work usually.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't until just a couple years ago. Honestly,
So once you graduate high school and all that, what were you doing in your 20s? What was life like?
well, I
Well,
got
not graduate high school. Once you left high school, I should say, moved, you know what I mean?
I got my GED at about 18, 19. Been working. After that happened, I got clean, and I want to say that I was July 3rd, right before my 21st birthday, is the last time I ever did dope. And so I was clean by at 21, pretty much off of that. I was still doing mushrooms and stuff like that, but I just worked my butt off. I worked 5, 6 days a week, make that money, and try and get as high as I could on pot. Go drinking and this and that, and that was a good part of my life for quite a while. Um, I will say during the tail end of that, whenever I was in the trap house, I met my now wife, or for now wife at least, and she was a big part of helping me get clean too, because I actually had somebody who cared, somebody who wasn't on the stuff but actually cared to help me get off. And I don't think I ever could have got clean without her. Um, but through that, we she smoked pot too, and we just mostly got high and go hiking and fishing and just little stuff that we do around here in the boonies. Wasn't ever anything exciting really. I've never taken a vacation until a couple of years ago. Just mostly working. I've been a workaholic most of my life.
Yeah. Do you think that's part of your addictive issues?
Oh, absolutely. And see, to me, addiction stems way deeper than just drugs or anything. I was addicted to video games at like 8 years old. I still am if I allow myself to play them. I get addicted to certain types of sodas sometimes. It's just anything that I find enjoyable, I seem to take too far.
Well, yeah, because all those things create a dopamine release in the brain.
Uh-huh. I've been in counseling lately, and he's been explaining all that to me, the actual physiological side effects of it.
Yeah, so I mean, anything that causes a dopamine release, we find pleasurable and we will try to use it as much as we can. It's like a
Yeah.
natural high.
Yeah.
So you've been sober since 21 from heroin. What were you doing with the other stuff? What other kinds of things were you doing besides shrooms? Did you do cocaine or anything like that?
No, during the trap house days, there was a guy that would come over and he'd bring bags of crack, and he'd just want to get high with everybody. And so I smoked crack a few times, and there was never anything I really enjoyed. It was
How'd it
just
feel?
like you're in a tin box for about 10 minutes.
You're in a tin box for 10 minutes?
Yeah, feels
That
like
doesn't
you're
sound
like
too
inside
much
of a tin
fun.
box. Everything's just. It wasn't great, and I don't understand how people get. I mean, I've always thought, and I've had a couple people tell me, dentists and stuff, that I'm allergic to the anes, cocaine, uh, lidocaine, all that stuff. Because every time I go to the dentist, unless they use this synthetic that's called Marcaine, I don't get numb. And so I don't think that speed and stuff like that does the same thing to me that it does everybody else. But I've never actually been tested for that, except for, like I said, when I go to the dentist, I don't get numb. And they can give me 4 or 5 shots and it doesn't do anything. And so I
That's a
can't, I'm probably not a good person to put a perspective on cocaine and stuff because I've done it, but it didn't really affect me.
gotcha. So when did you get sober off everything else? When was the then what
Um,
made you do it?
about 25, I realized that I had been being really mean to pretty much everybody in my life. And so I tried to quit drinking, and it took me probably a year. And with the support of my wife, I was able to finally put down the bottle for good. I haven't had a drink since I was probably 28. I tried what once I went through a year or so, I tried to, oh, I can just have a few beers, and that was okay for a little bit, and then it quickly turned back into that bottle of whiskey, and I realized that that's just going to be the rest of my life. So I haven't drank in probably 4 or 5 years at least. I don't keep a number on it, but I quit doing psychedelics around the same time. I wasn't doing them very heavy after I was about 22. I did a lot of I did mushrooms every day for like 45 days one time. Not a
Yeah.
whole lot, but like a gram or two. And so I went through that phase. I haven't tripped since I was probably 25. Um, hadn't I haven't allowed myself to do opiates since then, except for a time that I got hurt. It was pretty much just pot from 25 into 30, and then I met Jesus, and absolutely changed my life. Um, I was raised very religious, and I know that Dad and Grandpa tried to preach you have to have a relationship, but it is so much more than just going to church and being religious. You have to have that relationship with Him, otherwise things don't change.
Yeah.
And I encourage people, if you are saved, to go to church because you'll learn. But more than that, it's you have that family to support you. You have those people that will get behind you and can hopefully understand your struggles and help you through things. But it's so much more. I go to church pretty regularly, but I don't think that you have to. The Bible does say not to um, forsake the assembling, but I think that's for our own spiritual benefit. It doesn't have to be like a religious practice that we have to do this or we're going to go to hell. It's that it helps us to stay in communion with those others and to have that relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And so I'll just be blunt. If I can't talk about this stuff, you can cut it out. When I got saved, I was going through a really hard time in life. I was about ready to kill myself. I was ready to shoot myself in the head.
How
And
come?
well, I'd been going through some stuff, and my relationships weren't going too well. And I won't go into the full details, but life had just gotten to me. All I was doing was smoking pot, but it wasn't even drugs. It was just life. I was at one of those turning points people talk about, and I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to grow up. And I met Christ, and He delivered me from weed, from pornography and chronic masturbation, anger. I used to punch holes in the walls like once a week. I haven't done that in 2 3 years. He took all those really bad parts of me and got rid of them, and I can't explain it anything other than supernatural. I have no explanation. There was nothing at all that I did except for repent and call Him Lord. Um, that's the only thing I can say is I know God is real because I've experienced Him because He delivered me. Once I quit smoking pot, I realized just how negative it had affected me. Within the first 3 months, I got pretty much everything done that I'd been putting off for years. Started fixing things around my house, fixing relationships in my life. I started talking to my mom again, which is unheard of. We hadn't talked for 11 years. And I just started rebuilding relationships and myself into a whole new person. And it's been a struggle, but He's getting me through it. And, every day's hard, but whenever you have Him or somebody but Him backing you up on it, you can get through it. So you don't worry about it as much.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're doing good nowadays.
Yeah, I'm trying. Like every day's a struggle, but when you have the joy of the Lord, He'll get you through it. I don't.
What would you
I wouldn't.
say?
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for that experience. I wouldn't. I
Yeah.
would be dead.
What are the type of things you do daily to keep yourself sober? Is it a lot of reflection, a lot of prayer, things like that?
I wake up and pray every morning. Even if I have to jump out of bed and go help somebody, I'm praying in the car on the way there. But I try and get up, go to the bathroom, usually take a shower, and then I'll get down on my knees and pray for as long as I feel necessary. And then I try to get in the Word for at least a little bit every day. Read a little bit of Scripture, or listen to it on the phone, something like that. And I'll tell you what, the Bible is alive, and whenever you open it, He will give you the passages that you need to read for that day. It might sound crazy, but it's the truth. Your thumb will just go right to where you need to see. Your eye will see that passage that you need, and it'll speak to you all day. And on top of that, like I had to realize that I'm an alcoholic. I haven't drank in 5 years, but I'll always be an alcoholic. I cannot have that first drink. So knowing that helps me to say no when somebody offers me a beer. Knowing that I have an addictive personality, and if I take just a hit of pot, I'm going to want to start smoking again, keeps me from taking that first hit. And that's really what it is that prevention of doing it the first time, thinking that you can master this thing, because you can't. It's always going to master you. If you've had an addiction, it will always master you.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you've had quite the story for you going through your life and all the trials and troubles you've been through.
Yeah, and we're just getting started.
Just getting started. I
Oh
like
yeah.
that. So did you have anything else you wanted to add in? I think it's been a pretty good interview. How do you feel?
Oh, pretty good. No, I really kind of left some stuff out because I don't want anybody to hear this and feel personally attacked. But I just want to leave people that if you don't know Jesus, or if you're on the fence, do the study. And I was all into Buddhism and Taoism and this and that. I searched through pretty much every major religion trying to find God, and he'd been in front of my face the whole time. And I maintain that if you're looking for him, you'll find him. It will never be in the areas that you expect. But I have somebody close to me in my life right now that's been looking through all these different religions. I was like, you know what? God's revealing himself to you because you're searching for him. The Bible says, knock and it'll be open to you, seek and you'll find. You don't have to get in the Bible to find God, but it'll help. But anybody that's searching, keep an open mind. If you've only been a Christian, keep an open mind to reading the Quran, to reading the works of Buddha and stuff. Because if you look at it in facts, you'll find the truth. And so I know so many Christians, they're just so opposed to reading the Quran. It's like, well, if you'd actually read it, you would be able to see what's wrong with it, and you'd be able to have better discussions with people and maybe, help other people see the light. But so many people, they just want to shelter themselves in and not go out of their comfort zone. And that's the worst thing you can do. We have to be uncomfortable to stimulate growth.
All right, my friend. It's been a great interview. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. It really means a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. And like I said before, anything we missed, anything we glossed over?
Not that I know of.
All right, my friend. All right. So sit tight for me for just a minute. And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below, give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on all social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, we're on it. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There's plenty of free resources as well as free literature. Also, the last thing is Addicts Anonymous. The book is now out. It's available on Kindle and Amazon. It's called Addicts Anonymous, Our Stories. And eventually it'll be available on many more platforms. But for now, it's just on Kindle and Amazon. So I hope you guys could check it out and give me some feedback. So that's all I have for today. Really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time.